Okay, so let's continue. Tradition, which is often placed in opposition to modernity as its other, encompasses the of the above obverse of the above attributes. Okay, so tradition is always kept in opposition to modernity. അല്ലേ ട്രഡീഷണൽ ആയിട്ടുള്ള ആളും മോഡേൺ ആയിട്ടുള്ള ആളും അത് രണ്ട് വാക്കുകൾ പറയുമ്പോൾ തന്നെ നിങ്ങളുടെ മനസ്സിൽ രണ്ട് ഇമേജസ് വന്നില്ലേ? Okay, so it is always in opposition. Tradition and modernity are never together, they're always in opposition. All right, and when we talk about tradition, modernity automatically becomes the other എന്നുള്ളതാണ് ഇവിടെ പറയുന്നത്. Okay, and it encompasses almost the opposite attributes of each other. രണ്ടിലുള്ള attributes almost opposite ആണ് എന്ന് നമുക്ക് പറയാം. Tradition epitomizes ignorance, changelessness, narrow-mindedness and lack of power. Traditional എന്ന് പറയുമ്പോൾ എന്താണ്? Ignorance ആയിരിക്കും. കാരണം ഉള്ളതൊന്നും പുറമെ നമ്മൾ വിശ്വസിക്കുന്നതല്ലാതെ പുറമെ ഒന്നും വിശ്വസിക്കാൻ റെഡിയല്ല. There is a changelessness, you are not ready to change yourself. You are narrow-minded and there is a lack of power there. All right, because of being so narrowly constrained within yourself. Traditional India was a compendium of all these vices in British historical accounts. When Britishers used to write about traditional India, they used to write about all these vices, about how Indians are so superstitious and are so stupid, right? Of how they have these very ignorant beliefs. So that was what traditional India was it was really actually that, and that is what Britishers wrote in their historical accounts. The British counted it as their historical responsibility, and that is why they thought, remember that white man's burden ennulla sambhavam ningal kettittundo, when they colonized the different areas of Asia and Africa and Australia, what they say is that we have the white man's burden. As white men, we are dominant, we are superior, we have superior intelligence and superior culture, and it is our duty to bring these savages and these uneducated people into the correct way of living. So they thought of it as their historical responsibility as enlightened members of the civilized world. Remember, they always thought of themselves as civilized and everyone else as uncivilized. So they thought it was their historical responsibility to change this situation. A traditional Indian adil ninnu maattikondu povunnathu, it was their historical responsibility. This is the background of the colonists' grand project of reform. Okay, so that is how they did reform, and I have to add in that some of these reforms were very much needed, but some of them were not. All right, and when these reform came, it was accompanied by the discourses of modernity, complex, contradictory and elaborate, in which scholars from both India and Britain participated with varying degree of commitment. So with this grand project of reform, there was the accompanying discourse of modernity, complexity, contradictory ideas. All right, and both Indian and British scholars, they participated in these debates of commitments with different degrees of commitment. It would have been impossible for the 19th and early 20th century scholars from India, whether of Orientalist, Anglicist, Reformist or Nationalist cast of mind, to remain uninfluenced by this project and this discourse. Okay, so it is impossible, they say. When the Britishers were here, it was their historical responsibility to reform India. So no matter who it was, early 19th century ആദ്യത്തെ Indologists ആണെങ്കിലും 20th century Orientalist, Anglicist, Reformist, Nationalist, ഏത് ചിന്താഗതിയുള്ള ആൾക്കാരാണേലും സ്കോളേഴ്സ് ആണേലും, it was impossible for them to remain uninfluenced by this project of reform. They must have been influenced by this. എന്താണ് പറയുന്നത്? The contradictions and complexities that we noticed in Indian responses to Orientalism and nationalism are in fact linked to the divided logic within modernity itself. That is why a Nehruvian nationalist slogan like India's unity lies in its diversity also becomes the credo of Indian modernity. All right, one need not be exceptionally intelligent to realize the slogan that Indian literature is one, though written in many languages, is only the literary critical analog of the nationalist modernist percept concerning India's unity lying in its diversity. Okay, so no matter what the scholars believed in that particular point of time, it was impossible for them not to be pulled in by these ideas that were circulating during that time. ആ സമയത്തുണ്ടായിരുന്ന Indian responses, it probably did affect the manner in which scholars viewed Indian literature. And that is why when Nehru gave us the slogan that we use even today, that university lies in diversity. India's university lies in diversity, and the Jawaharlal Nehru and the slogan is used even till today, right? And that became the credo, or that became the statement of Indian modernity. Okay, it became the statement by which India began to define itself, that India's unity lies in its diversity. It is diverse, but it is one എന്നുള്ള ഒരു ഐഡിയ ആണ് സ്പ്രെഡ് ചെയ്തത്. അതേ ഒരു സ്ലോഗന്റെ ഇന്ത്യസ് യൂണിവേഴ്സിറ്റി ലൈസ് ഇൻ ഇറ്റ്സ് ഡൈവേഴ്സിറ്റിയുടെ അതേ സ്ലോഗൻ തന്നെയാണ്. വി ഡോണ്ട് നീഡ് ടു ബി എക്സെപ്ഷണലി ഇന്റലിജന്റ്. ഒരുപാട് ബുദ്ധിയൊന്നും വേണ്ട അത് മനസ്സിലാക്കാൻ. എന്ത് നമ്മുടെ സാഹിത്യ അക്കാദമിയുടെ സ്ലോഗൻ എന്തായിരുന്നു? Indian literature is one though written in many languages, right? So it is the same thing basically. So this slogan that was used by Sahitya Academy to define Indian literature is, you know, very much related to this particular slogan that was used by Nehru for the nationalist sensibility. All right. So it is only the literary critical analog of the nationalist modernity's percept concerning India's unity. All right. So it is the critical analog, or it is the critical comparative statement for it is basically the same statement. All right. This genealogy of Indian literature, however, does not preclude, as several scholars point out, the presence of myths, legends, and stories, as well as perhaps even patterns of narration of stories that have for centuries bound a variety of literature of India together. All right. So even though we say that Indian literature is one though written in many languages, even though we say that India's unity lies in a diversity, അതേ സമയത്ത് this genealogy of Indian literature that only focuses on the diversity does not give us the answers as to why there is a pattern, there is a similar pattern in the way stories are narrated in Indian literature that for centuries has bound Indian literature together. ഒരേ രീതിയിലുള്ള കുറെ commonalities ഉണ്ട് എന്നാണ് പറയുന്നത്. What are these? This may be treated as an aspect of the dialectic of India's modernity. All right. So it is probably an aspect of this, you know, dialectic forces of India's modernity. You must have studied archetypal criticism. Archetypal criticism in the but P.P. Raveendran is questioning this. Okay. One might come across myths, motives, and patterns of storytelling. Myths, motives, storytelling patterns similar ആണ് Indian literature, okay, that might reappear through India in both ancient and medieval periods. എല്ലാ periodsലും ഇതേ same ideas ഉണ്ടെന്നാണ് പറയുന്നത്. Scholars like Ayyappa Panikar would say that there is a specifically Indian way of narrating stories. Ayyappa Panikar എന്താണ് പറയുന്നത്? There is a, just like your Ramanujan says, is there an Indian way of thinking? Ayyappa